Welcome to Focus on Cine Lenses from the Buyer's POV. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are. This event started like pretty much all of our events because I wanted to know more about the subject. As a cine equipment investor myself, I needed to keep up with what's new in lenses. Judging by the crowd, I would say that I'm not the only one interested. Lenses are a big investment, but they have a much longer useful life than cameras. I've gone through 5 cameras with my current set of lenses. Lenses even have appreciated in value as people are looking for a vintage look with digital cameras. So they have been a pretty safe investment. However, now with sensor sizes growing and so many lenses coming to market, the decision-making process has become far more complicated. Coverage area, speed, metadata, mounts, not to mention anamorphic or not, and all different sizes of anamorphic. We are blessed with a lot of choices, but it gets complicated. To help everybody stay abreast and make good decisions, we have gathered some of the major lens experts and manufacturers in one place at one time to see what's available. Joining me today as co-moderator is renowned lens expert, Matthew Duclos. Matthew will not only offer his commentary, but will also curate the audience questions. So ask away in the Q&A submissions. We'll take a couple of questions after each presentations and try to have time for more at the end. Matthew is not only a lens expert, he's not the only lens expert with us today. We are lucky to have participating in alphabetical order of company name from Angénieux, Jean-Marc Bouchut, from ARRI Art Adams, from Canon, Michael Bravin, from Cooke Optics, Zellan, from Fujinon, we have Tom Fletcher. From Infinity Photo-Optical, we have J. Margolis. And from PS Technik, we have Gerhard Baier. From Sigma, Brian Linhoff. From Tokina, Ryan Avery. And from Zeiss, Snehal Patel. Our editor, Christopher Nell, will play some of the samples during the presentations, which are necessarily compressed and may be hard to judge on Zoom. But we are recording this session and will be posting the event on Vimeo in a day or two, along with higher resolution versions of the footage. So check back on our website if you're interested to see those in a little better quality. But first, I'd like to tell you about a friend and colleague we lost recently. This event is dedicated to Denny Clairmont, a founding member of the Digital Cinema Society, who passed away May 10th at the age of 85. He was a leading camera and lens expert and the owner of Clairmont Camera, which he co-founded in 1976 with his late brother Terry, and sold the Keslow camera when he retired in 2018. Denny was born in 1935 and grew up in Hollywood, the son of a silent era cinematographer, Leonard Clairmont. Denny and Terry were known for innovation and would often create custom gear to meet special demands of cinematographers. As a result, the firm became highly successful. In addition to their headquarters in Studio City, California, eventually he had offices in Toronto, Vancouver, Albuquerque, New Mexico. They received a Medal of Commendation from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences Technical Awards Committee and 2 Emmys for lens innovation. Besides being a lens expert and camera expert who was always willing to share his knowledge, Denny was also constantly eager to learn about new technology. Before retiring to Northern California, he was a fixture at most DCS events in his trademark Hawaiian shirt and driving a late model Corvette. He'll be greatly missed by his many friends, colleagues, and proteges. And now let's hear from Denny himself. He was a co-moderator at a past DCS lens event. So Chris, can you roll that now?
When it comes to anamorphic lenses, I gotta wear 2 hats. As a lens technician, I'll tell you, they're not good lenses. I can tell you all sorts of things wrong with them. But then the director of photography and the directors are not technicians, they're artists. They like all the things the lens technician will tell you what's wrong with anamorphic lenses. So they're very popular. And so they're being more and more and more used. And then now we have the new Alexa XT camera with open gate. That even makes it better. So anamorphic is making a big comeback. Many years ago, and I still have some, Airflex came out with some really short little zoom lenses, about 2 times zoom. They call them variable primes. That name was a serious mistake because those were zoom lenses, and they were really good lenses. And then so many DBs tell me, oh, I'd like to use a lens, but doing the shutter, I like to do a little bit of zoom. You can, but they're variable primes. No, they're not variable primes. So they made a mistake on that one.
Well, that's news to me.
Yeah.
So gentlemen, we'll now go to you. Please tell us a little bit about your lenses, and if you dare, what I call the bad news, that's the price, because it is a major factor in the purchase decision. Let's start out with Jean-Marc.
Nice to see you, all of you. It's always great to have a panel. We miss really Cine Gear this year. So it's good to have that, even if it's on Zoom. Just a small note, I joined Baier Pro 2 months ago, so I'm representing Angénieux because I'm project manager for the Angénieux product at Baier Pro, but I'm with a different company, and we represent also the whole line of lenses from the Zeiss, Cooke, and other manufacturers. So I'm going to talk about the Angénieux latest lenses. So first, I think, Chris, can you maybe just show the picture? One of that picture was taken 2 years ago at Martha's Vineyard at the set of She's Got Avid Season 2. So that was the first US production using the 12-time Optimo Ultra. What really kind of struck me on that picture is two things. Well, first was the first time they used the lens, so everybody was super happy, super just proud of having that lens on their camera. But also, it's a pre-COVID picture, and I think having 25, 30 people on the same picture without a mask, without social distancing is really something we are missing a lot. And the industry right now, it's kind of in a survival mode, and we hope that will stop soon, because we all need to make money, and we all need to see really just a new production running soon. So the 12 time has been very successful. We delivered probably close to 200 worldwide in the past 2 years. The other just zoom lens we really introduced 3 years ago was the easy lenses. So Chris, maybe you put the second picture. So the easy lenses was a very interesting concept, lightweight, very fast lenses, T2 in Super 55 and T3 in full frame, and they are modular. So you buy one lens and you can swap the rear group in order to just optimize your image for the camera format you are using. And the price level is very competitive. It's, so we have 15 to 40 and 30 to 90, two set of lenses, and the full package runs around $15,000 for each lens. So it's very successful, and especially with the new large format camera that were introduced by the camera manufacturer in the past 2 years. And last year at the time of Cine Gear, we introduced a new set of lenses. That's the first time in 50 years that Angénieux is going to prime lenses. So we have now a series of 12 lenses from 18 to 200. These lenses are very compact, very light. They are very fast, T18 for most of them. They cover full frame, all of them. And one of the unique things that we introduce in these lenses is modularity and creativity. So you have a free option for creativity and modularity. You have a rear flat that can be used for detuning the lens. And you have an internal filter, an internal palette that's inside of the lens by the iris that can be used for any kind of special effect, detuning of the image, creating a special flare. And also you have the iris cartridge can be removed very quickly. So you have the option to play with iris, having different numbers of blades on your iris. I have a small video to show the modularity of the prime lenses. So maybe Chris, you can run the and just talk about that. Can you lower a little bit the sound, Chris? So the concept is really from scratch. We really designed these lenses just based on a brand new optical design. So that gave us the flexibility to create a new look and a new modulator on these lenses. So you have a rear flat that can be used for the look, but you can also remove the front group very easily. It takes around, like I would say, 10 to 15 minutes to take the lens apart and put it back together. So by removing the front group, you get access to the internal palette, which is right in front of the iris. So we'll provide some tooling and some set of the palette in order for you to use your specific look. You have a retaining ring, and then the what we call the internal element, the internal palette comes out, and just you have like a small mask to protect the internal palette, and then your iris cartridge come out. And you can do reverse, put the lens back together and shoot with the lens very quickly. So that operation is like 15 minutes. I think we'll stop here. I'll leave the microphone to James Mathers. But the video is a little bit longer. So,
Yes, I have a couple of questions. It seems like this is a rental house lens, something that the rental house can configure for a particular job and change it for the next job without permanently changing the lens. But what can an owner operator do this kind of thing, or do you need an experienced optical technician to make these changes?
Well, the concept we designed for rental house. I am sure some people can do it when they learn, but you need specific tools to really access very quickly to the internal palette. So we really will start teaching the rental house, and then after people can figure it. But yeah, you need to be in a clean area. You need to be in a dust-free area. You can't really do that on the set. You have screws that may fall into the focus mechanism, so it can be tricky. After, it's really up to everybody to just figure it. But it's very simple to do, as long as you have the right tools and the right instruction.
And do you want to tell the bad news, the price?
No, the price is pretty competitive. You know, we have to be at the right level. So we're around $300,000 for a set of 12 lenses.
Okay. And availability, did you mention that?
No, I haven't mentioned that. That's yeah. So we are making the first set right now, and they'll start shipping in September, October time. So a set of 6. Then after there will be a set of 9, end of the year, and a set of 12. The last 3 will be probably around Q2 next year.
Okay, Matt Duclos, do we have questions from the audience or from yourself?
Yeah, there's a couple. First one from Mark. Do the easy zooms cover VistaVision, specifically 46.3 millimeter sensors? Not the primes, the easy.
They don't cover full range. They cover around 40, I think it's 43 or 44, but not full 46. You'll see some vignetting on the edges.
Perfect. And then the other question was from Roberto Schaefer, ASC. What is the idea of changing the iris? What are the available choices? I assume it's different shapes, different quantity of blades.
Well, right now we are just introducing that and talking to people. So I think a lot of people are really toward the oval bokeh. So that's something we will have an iris with oval bokeh. And we are offering a 3-bladed iris, 6-bladed iris, and maybe 18-bladed iris. We are talking to people and just want to give the feedback because it costs kind of quite a lot to build an iris. So we don't want to make something that's not going to fly.
So the idea is to provide rental houses and cinematographers with a different shape to change the shape of the bokeh.
Exactly. That's the plan.
All right, well, thank you very much. Very interesting new direction for prime lenses. Next up, we have from ARRI, Art Adams. Art's a cinematographer for many years who went over to the manufacturing side recently. Art, can you tell us about the new lenses from ARRI?
Sure. You're looking through one right now. This is a 58 millimeter signature prime. I just happen to have an LF laying around, so I fired it up as a webcam because.
You show off.
Sure.
Looks good.
Yeah,
Looks good.
thanks. Yeah, they're fun to show off. So the design philosophy, I'll talk about that really quick, and then we're just going to go into video. So a lot of lenses derive their character from aberrations. We did a lot of research into what is coming next as far as camera capture resolutions and display resolutions. And we noticed that the higher resolution you go, the more you see those aberrations. So we wanted to try to figure out some sort of character that didn't rely on aberrations that will still be relevant in 10 years when everyone's watching 8K HDR TVs. So we came up with a lens design that really eliminates just about every visible optical aberration possible, and then builds a look on top of that. So the look is not based off of aberrations. And we believe that's going to last a good long time as everything improves. Why don't I talk about that right now? Let's just roll the video and I'll just talk over it. And we can, this is the Signature Prime 2020 summer show reel first. And then I've got a little short film that I shot recently.
Let's keep the sound way down, please, Chris.
So what I hope you'll notice is that the look is really natural at the point of focus, but it's really smooth when it goes out of focus. And to me, it creates this really interesting dichotomy because the lenses are very high resolution, but they're not classically crisp or sharp. You'll see lots of detail, but it's not forced. One DP who bought one of the first sets in LA said that he thinks this is like looking through a really beautiful window. But then when you look at the bokeh is incredibly smooth. Even when it's not that far out of focus, there's a lot of separation because to me, there's not a lot for my eye to grab onto. Your eye tends to go to areas of contrast, areas of contrast tends to be the things that are in focus, but the things that are out of focus are so smooth, my eye just naturally kind of, it sees it, but I know where to look. And I think as resolutions increase, guiding the viewer's eye around the frame is going to start being an interesting factor. I think sometimes, depending on the resolution and the screen size, if you give people too much to look at, it can actually be overwhelming. I actually saw this in a very early UHD demo where I saw an image that had so much texture in it, I almost panicked because I knew I wasn't going to be able to see it all before the edit, and I didn't know when the edit was coming. Now, a lot of what we're seeing, this is a feature, and I want to see more of this feature. I don't even know what the name of it is, but it looks great. We've got man, a lot of commercial work. Emma, we're seeing a lot of uptake in commercials. It's starting to become kind of a go-to beauty lens, which is really interesting. And also, it's really big in visual effects now because the distortion is very, very low, so it tends to be really good for compositing visual effects elements, and also blue and green screens because the color discrimination is so high. There's a lot of subtlety in the hues that you see through these lenses. They're naturally warm. They're actually the warmest modern lenses I've seen, but the color is still very good. The subtlety of hues is very good. Now, this next piece is a little short film that I shot on a sales trip. This is a still photographer who shoots a lot of Americana in New Mexico. Shot this in about an hour and a half, just before sunset. But it was really fun to go out with a large format camera and shoot a real large format camera. So what's really interesting, once again, is just keep an eye on the textures that you see at the point of focus, how much you see and how natural it looks. But then when it goes out of focus, just notice how soft that is. It's just so delicate. It's really interesting. It's hard to describe, but I haven't really seen anything like it. Now I've got a little demo of that right here. I thought this was really interesting, so I actually slowed it down. But when I roll focus across the surface, you can really see the lines coming in and out of focus. And you can see how quickly they lose their, I don't want to say sharpness because it doesn't feel sharp, but the contrast. It doesn't feel like I don't know, it's hard, maybe I'm getting a little too meta here, but to me, it just feels like the lens is just sort of gently pushing my attention around. It's just a really interesting look. They do feel like they go out of focus more quickly than other lenses. it's not a mathematical thing. It's just that we worked really hard on the bokeh. So when they go out of focus, they go out more softly, I think, than a lot of other lenses. Now, this next shot, we're gonna have a little bit of a focus rack, which is fun because these lenses really don't do much in the way of breathing. And that's also part of the design philosophy, is to create a beautiful lens that doesn't draw attention to itself, because we think when resolutions get dramatically, increased, we don't really want it to be about the lens. We want it to be about more immersion, which is another one of the design goals. I love this shot because even though the background isn't that far out of focus, it's lost all the hard edges. I think that's really interesting. And there's a shot coming up. We're going to have a little flare example in a second here. And then after that, there's a shot coming up that in UHD is just stunning. And it's this one. In UHD, there is so much detail just in that little ring. You can almost see the paint on the lens. It's really fascinating. And hey, Tom, little promo here for you. So just a little shout out. And that's as close as I could get to the still image that he was capturing at the time. And there's a lot of detail in there. We just, actually, we just put the show reel on YouTube today. This isn't up on YouTube yet, but at some point we'll pop it up there. But in UHD, there's so much subtlety. It's really interesting. It looks great in Rec 709, but in UHD, it's fantastic. And I know the next question you're going to ask me. Mid-range, about 25,000. And then at the extreme ends, when you get into the 280 or the 12, we have a rectilinear 12. Those go up to about 40.
Well, you get what you pay for. They seem like really beautiful lenses. Now these are the new LPF mount?
LPL.
LPL, excuse me. And you can adapt those to PL, of course.
You can adapt PL to those, yeah. The idea is that PL is outdated. It leaves room for a mechanical shutter we don't use anymore. And also to make a near telecentric lens where the light is coming out of the back of the lens is as dead onto the sensor as all the way across the sensor as possible. You can't light up a large format sensor if the back of the lens is smaller than the sensor. So we had to make the mount as big as the sensor. And then that way we can make near telecentric lenses. A great way to tell if a lens is near telecentric is if you look at the back and you look at the exit pupil, the image of the aperture viewed through the back of the lens. If it's about 10 to 12 centimeters forward of where the sensor plane is, you're in near telecentric territory. So that's optimized for digital sensors. It eliminates a lot of aberrations that you get around the edge of the frame due to the design of photosites and the fact that there's a filter pack in front of the sensor, and that actually you can get optical aberrations by putting rays through that at too steep an angle, because if the glass is this thick, in the center you're going through this amount of glass, at the edges you're going through more glass, and that actually has an impact. And near telecentricity tries to make that glass appear the same depth to light rays all the way across the sensor.
Matt, do you have any questions?
Yep, we have one from Benjamin. He asks, is it possible to use signature prime lenses, LPL, on a PL mount camera?
No, sadly. LPL is, I mean, we give it away. It's the same thing as PL. We gave it away in the 80s, and we're doing the same thing now. So we're hoping LPL gets adopted because it just kind of makes sense. And it allows you to just sort of be able to move whatever lenses you want to move around whatever size sensor camera you're working with. But PL, you can put up, we have a PL adapter that will put PL mount lenses at the proper flange depth, which is 52 millimeters for PL. LPL is 44. So you can't go backwards. You can go forwards, but you can't go backwards.
And then just to elaborate on what Art said, even though you can't use the signature primes on a PL camera, there are still LPL mount options for several other cameras, like the Sony cameras, the Red cameras. You can still use the signature primes on those cameras. You just need that LPL mount for the camera. Right.
You just replace the mount, which is usually trivial.
Right.
There's also a number of mounts. Yeah, a number of mounts for still cameras like the GFX 100 and the Sony Alpha series. So there's a number of interesting scouting options as well.
So thank you very much, Art. Anything else you wanted to add, Matthew?
There are no more specific questions about the signature prime, so if you guys have any, drop them in the Q&A right now. Otherwise,
Okay.
that's it.
All right. Then thank you very much, Art. Appreciate it. Nice presentation. And next up, we have my friend Michael Bravin. He's a fellow with Canon USA who manages Canon Burbank. Michael, tell us about what's new with Canon lenses, please.
Hi, Jim. Thanks, and thanks to everyone in the audience. And it's great to see all my colleagues, even if it's just on a Zoom window. Today, I'm going to talk about our line of Sumire primes, our PL primes that we introduced last year. And Christopher, if you want to go ahead and start the slides. I just have a few slides to show. The Sumire primes are a result of a couple years of research and development, talking with cinematographers about what they would like to see in a lens. A lot of the talk was about why they use vintage lenses and what are some of the look and feel that they see in a vintage lens that they'd like to see in a modern designed and modern manufactured lens. So we talked to cinematographers around the world and gathered feedback and found out what some of the important things. First of all, it had to be able to cover full frame. It had to have a PL mount, which for Canon, our previous primes were EF mount. It had to be compact and lightweight. And one of the things that the engineers discovered when they were looking at some of the scenarios for how they would build these lenses is that they wanted the lens to be able to perform and resolve in 4K and 8K cameras when the lenses are closed down, but when they're wide open, to have a more creative look. And so the Sumire primes were born. To fill a gap in our product line, we have a range of cinema zooms, a range of servo lenses that are used for broadcast as well as handheld for cinema. We had our CNE primes that were EF mount, and we have our compact servos that are designed to work on EF cameras. And as a result of the R&D, the Sumire primes were developed. And the idea of the lenses is to fill out our product line. And so now we have a set of PL primes, EF primes, and the cinema primes that we have as part of our product lineup. And also at the end of a presentation, I'll talk about the new 25 to 250. The set is 7 lenses, PL mount as was specified. They cover full frame and work with the full frame cameras that are out there. There's a chart that I'll show in a moment. There's 7 focal lengths of 14, 20, 24, 35, 50, 85, and 135. And all of the lenses, when you stop them down to a 4, they kind of shift their look into a crisper, more contrasty look. But as you open them up, the character of the lenses is displayed. Next slide. A lot of people ask about the name Sumire. Sumire is a flower in Japan. It's also a very common young women's name. And the concept is that, like the petals of a flower, as you open the lens, the image becomes more beautiful. I'm assuming that when we see this on the web, we'll be able to resolve the chart a little bit better. But basically what this chart is showing is that the Sumires cover most of the cameras that are out there from Super 35 to full frame. The outside framing lines are for the Monstro VistaVision and for the Alexa 65, and there's a bit of vignetting on the edge of those images. Next slide. The actual, one second here, the actual design of the lenses met all of the requirements that we got in feedback. They mechanically match the CNE lenses that we have. They have the same Canon color science, 300-degree rotation. The gears are all in the same position, and the lenses are lightweight and yet durable. So how does the Sumire prime help with close-ups? One of the design criteria was to have really beautiful skin tones, to have sharp focus, but not have a crispy look to the lenses, for the lenses to be a bit on the warmer side and also to have smooth bokeh without sharp edges. And one of the other important issues with the lens is how to manage the focus fall off. So the mechanical design of the lens means that as you go in and out of focus, there's very smooth transition from the in-focus parts to the out-of-focus parts. Here's a couple images that were shot by Ernesto Lamelli with the lenses when they first came out. Shot with a 14, 85, and a 135. And this is just some really strongly backlit handheld footage that he shot. A couple of these shots show up in the demo reel that I'm going to show in a moment. But you notice the soft, smooth bokeh. You notice that you have sharp portions of the image, but the image has kind of a dreamy, creamy look to it. It also handles backlight really well, and it has some very interesting flares. We're going to put a link in the video that's going to be posted for an article that was written by John Fowler in Film and Digital Times that talks about the Canon lens factory and the commitment to imaging, historical commitment to imaging, and how the Sumerays were designed and developed. And then for those of you that are available a couple times a month, and our next program is on Friday, this Friday at 2 o'clock Pacific time, we sit down with a couple of cinematographers that have shot with the lenses. They show some of their footage and they talk about using the lenses for their projects. So this link will also be in the video. Christopher, you want to go ahead and play the reel?
Beautiful, Michael. Beautiful.
Thanks, Jim. One of the
But what I
things-
really want to find out about
Hey, go ahead.
is the new zoom lens. How do you pack that much range into that light of a package?
It's magic.
Tell us some of the details of that.
Okay, so our new zoom lens that we just introduced since we've been out of the office for the pandemic is the 25 to 250. And the idea behind this lens was to build a companion lens to the 17 to 120 that was relatively the same size and weight. It's a very popular lens for handheld shooting. And like the 17 to 120, you can remove the servo and use the lens in both configurations that you see shown on the screen. Go ahead in the next slide, Christopher. And I alluded to this earlier. If you look over onto the right, this is where this lens fits into our product lineup. Between the 17 to 120 and the 50 to 1000. The lens comes in a PL or EF mount. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Here's a picture of Steve Holleran, who's the cinematographer that shot our product release video for the C300 Mark III that we literally shot up until the day before we went out for the pandemic. And here's a picture of the lens mounted on the C300 with Steve hand holding it. The lens, he referred to it, and I think it's a really interesting way of looking at the lens as a unicorn lens, because it's very unusual to see a lens that's designed and can be implemented in the cine, ENG, broadcast, and documentary worlds. It can perform on a dolly on set, and it can perform handheld, and it can perform in many different applications, including on one end, broadcasting on studio cameras, and the ability to plug in rear controls to do zoom, iris, and focus, take the servo off and use it with a fizz system. One of the other interesting things about the lens is the size and weight. You see here's a comparison between the 17 to 120 and the 25 to 250. The lens is 11 inches long and it weighs just under 7 pounds. One of the things that we're touting with the lens, and it's a very interesting application, is the ability to use the extender to give you a larger frame coverage. So when you put the 1.5 extender in, you lose a stop, but you now have an image that can cover most of the full frame cameras that are out there, and just by switching the extender. Here's a list of all of the different frame sizes for the cameras that are out there. Again, we'll have to wait to see it in the finished video so that you can make out the detail, but it basically will cover, we don't publish the image circle specs, but John Fowler did some of his own math and published in his Film and Digital Times that the camera can do 29.6 circle in Super 35, and it can cover up to 44.4 in large format. And that's.
And I know we've had a couple questions in the chat. People wanted to get that link again, so we'll try to put that at the end. We'll go back and catch that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Michael. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So that pretty much wraps up an overview of the 25-250 and the zoom arrays. Do you have any questions?
When is the delivery of these, and what's the right price if you have it?
The price I have is $29,999, and the zoom
That's
arrays,
for the zoom. Yep.
yeah, for the zoom. And the price of the zoom arrays, the lenses are $7,400 each. It's $51,800 for a set of 7. The zoom array lenses are in stock and shipping. The 25 to 250 is coming pretty soon. We're just starting to get prototype lenses out. So in the next, I believe it's in the next month, we'll start shipping the lenses.
And these all are designed to play together, the zooms and the primes?
In terms of color matching, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have all the same Canon color science. They're slightly different in the broadcast lenses with the cinema lenses, but for the piece that that we did for the C300, we interchanged images with the 25 to 250, the zoom arrays, and the rest of our lens lineup.
Great. Matthew, do you have questions?
Yep. So Benjamin asked, do the zoom array lenses offer metadata?
The zoom array lenses do not. The 25 to 250 in the PL mount does have Cooke eye.
And to elaborate on that, the regular CNE primes do have the Canon protocol for Canon mount.
Yeah. So the zoom arrays are designed and built as PL mount lenses, and you can, if you own them, you can get them modified for an EF mount, but it's just a mechanical.
And then to elaborate again on the coverage, I have tested the 25 to 250 on Monstro, and when you put that extender in, when you enable the extender, it does cover nicely. So for anyone that is wondering, I don't think Canon is saying that's an official feature, but to me, it basically becomes a full frame zoom.
Yeah.
There's quite an exposure penalty, though, I would assume.
Yeah, but that's inevitable. If you want larger coverage, you're going to lose that light. So for anyone that is wondering, that is possible. It will cover full frame.
Yeah.
And then one other question I had, for not just the Sumire, but also the regular CNEs, are there any plans for additional focal lengths?
Well, the discussion comes up quite often. I know you and I have had this conversation with some of the lens designers. I think it's certainly on the table, but we don't have any plans at this point that we're announcing.
Okay, fair enough.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Michael.
I would like to mention too,
yes,
since Matthew is on with us, is that if you do own a set of CNE EF mount primes, Matthew has a really nice modification that he can do to put a PL mount on those lenses.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, thanks. Eager to get my hands on that zoom.
Look that out.
Next, from Cooke Optics, we have Chairman Les Zellan. Les, are you on with us?
I am indeed. How are you today?
Oh, there he is, with his Oscar over his shoulder.
Yeah, you know, you always point it out, so I thought I'd put it in the frame, or I can make it disappear. Anyway,
so tell us about the newest lenses with Cooke Optics.
Yeah, I'd be happy to tell you. Well, first, let me just comment that I'm really pleased to see a lot of people in the industry moving toward the Cooke look, which is something we developed over the last over 100 years. So we're quite gratified with that. So if Chris, if you want to start running the slides. Obviously, that's who we are. We're Cooke. I assume most people know who we are. We have been introducing so many new lenses over the last few years. Obviously, we started the modern lens craze. Actually, Panavision started it with the Primos. We started it once for the non-Panavision world with the S4s, followed by the 5Is, the mini S4s, the Pancro Classics, the anamorphic eyes, and now the anamorphic full frame, and of course the S7s, which are our full frame plus lenses. They do cover up to the 46.31 image circle. And this is the latest to join, the 300 is the latest to join. Here is that we're now, we have announced, and we have announced three more lenses in the S7 family, and they are real one-to-one motion picture built and designed macros. There will be a 60, a 90, and a 150, and there'll be a 60, 90, 150, the full frame S7 lenses covering the full image circle and can go down to one-to-one. Okay, Chris. We continue to expand our line of full frame anamorphics, which are anamorphic eye series, full frame plus, and this is the latest one there, an 85mm macro. For those of you that are familiar with our Super 35 lenses, anamorphic lenses, there's a 65 macro. This is about the same angle of view, but for full frame. All our anamorphics are available in both regular, which is a normal flare, and then an SF version, which enables you to get more flare if you like for it. Okay, Chris. This is another addition to the full frame anamorphic series. It's a 180. For those that if you want to ask me later, I'll tell you there are more full frame anamorphics coming, and they will be similar in range to our Super 35 anamorphics. Chris, before you go on, I should say all of our full frame lenses, be them S7s or full frame anamorphics, are available with either PL or LPL. Is the amount you can change. I don't recommend you change it in the field, but at a shop, it's easily changed. So that you can go native mount on the new ARRI cameras, or you can go back to PL for existing cameras. This is a short film we did a while ago. People wanted to know, and I get a lot of questions on why, when we went to full frame, did we go to a 1.8 squeeze instead of a 2x squeeze? And it has a lot to do with the, I guess you can run the video if you want. It has a lot to do with, we're going from a 4x3 frame to a 3x2 frame. And we looked at all the variations, and we thought that 1.8 was the best compromise. If you do a 2x squeeze, you really lose too much information if you release it at 2.4. Also, if you do a full, when you use the full frame in anamorphic, it would be a 1.6 squeeze. And if you look at 1.6 squeeze, which I do not have a sample of, you will notice it doesn't look terribly anamorphic. So we did a 1.8. It gives us almost the whole frame of coverage in a full frame camera. And if you look at the comparison, the top one being our 1.8 6K on a Venice, a crop to 2.4, and the lower one, 4x3, 2X, also on the Venice up to 2.4. You can see they're almost identical. You get that, you get the anamorphic flavor and the bokeh, and frankly, if you don't get the anamorphic flavor, what's the point of shooting anamorphic? But you can see on the top frame, you get so much more, angle of view on the full frame lens. They're obviously both shot with a 50mm. I saw somebody ask earlier, and I saw Michael mentioned the Cooke eye system and metadata. We are quite pleased that the eye system has been adopted by a lot of people. It's an evolving standard. We have recently, about a year or so ago, introduced i3, which introduces shading and distortion data. Our distortion data is extremely accurate because we do it the same way the VFX house will do it, and that is we shoot every lens before it leaves the factory. So you're not getting an average, you're not getting a mathematical, whatever is right for it, you're getting the lens in the distortion information. So it's extremely accurate. And as we get more into this new COVID world, or post-COVID world, where we're doing immersive sets and these gigantic LED walls, we're finding that this technology is really going to come to its own. And I think over the next few weeks and months, we'll have a lot of announcements that will move eye really into the mainstream. Chris? This is, this is just some of the people that support eye. We've freely given it. Well, I won't say freely, we do license it. It is a licensed system. We give it away for £1 a year, but you can see that we've made it available to almost all the camera manufacturers, as well as our competitors, with the idea that if you don't all speak the same language, nobody's going to use anybody's system. So we're quite gratified that so many manufacturers have adopted eye, or can listen to eye and speak eye when necessary. Shot on Cooke is a new gallery that we've just developed over the last year or two. This is for people that use Cooke lenses. You can go to it and you can see samples of work that were shot on Cooke, It is sorted by lens series and genre. So if you want to see car commercials shot with S7s, you can go through the menu system and you can see that. If you do shoot on Cooke and you'd like your work up there, you can submit it, and and if it passes the mustard, and I'm sure everybody listening has work that would pass the mustard, we'd be happy to include it. It is not for trailers though. We want whole sequences. So it's not a trailer park. So I encourage you to go to shotonlookcooke.com and take a look. We've gotten a lot of comments that people have gone up there and wasted the whole day watching stuff to see what they get. Lastly, well, not quite lastly, Shot on Cooke. Now our older site was cookeoptics.tv. I hope that most of you are familiar with that. It is a labor of love. It is not Cooke-centric. We talk to DPs and cinematographers and all kinds of people behind the scenes getting their stories, whether it is, whether they shot on Cooke or used any competitor's lens, it doesn't matter. If they have an interesting story to tell, we tell it in like 5-minute vignettes. Wow, okay, I'm hurrying. I want to get a short plug in there, as Michael did as well, for Film and Digital Times, a great publication. You can see down here in the bottom left that if you don't have a subscription, you can go to fdtimes.com/promo and use the secret password Cooke Optics, and you will get a free online subscription if you don't have one. I really encourage you to do it. John has great articles not only on Cooke, which he recently did a updated factory tour on the Cooke factory, but he does, as Michael said, he does everybody's factory, and he knows all the secrets in the industry. So maybe one day we'll kidnap him and drug him and find out what's going on. Lastly, before I say thank you, I really want to mention Denny Clairmont, who this panel is dedicated to. Denny, as was pointed out by Jim, is a friend to all. He always had time for people, but I'd like to say he was particularly a friend and a mentor to me. I started in this industry in the late 70s. He always had time for me. He always encouraged me. He taught me a lot. He stood by us through very difficult times in the 80s. And then he also stood by us when I was able to successfully purchase Cooke in 1998. And he was a big reason why Oscar is standing behind me. So I can only tip my hat to him and wish him the best in his new life, and hope the angels are dancing with him. And with that, I thank you very much. And any questions?
A couple questions, yeah. And people don't maybe know that we actually had our very first DCS event at Claremont Camera. It was on doing Steadicam with HD cameras, which was pretty new at the time, but that was 17 years ago. At any rate, Les, I would like to know what was the changes that were brought about with the Series 3 of the iTechnology?
Mainly well, it's all backwards compatible. So the I1, the first generation, was just the basic lens data. And that's what's supported by, that's the commitment that other people have that are in the iTech partners. Their minimum obligation is to support I1, which is, focus, iris, depth of field information, entrance pupil, a few other things, but the basic lens information. I2 we added a few years ago, and that was adding inertial data, so you could physically track the camera through space. And then I3 is now adding the distortion and shading information, most apropos obviously for post-production. And as I said, the way we choose, there are several systems out there that are I systems. The way we choose to do it is, we think, is extremely accurate and should deliver pixel resolution on the solves that the tracking software does. So we're, and as we get into these immersive sets, that's what's going to be required. So we're quite excited about that.
Now, Matthew, do you have questions?
Yep, there's a couple here. Gaston asks, Les, can you point to the most important differences of a true or front anamorphic lens versus a rear anamorphic lens?
Sure, my pleasure. Thanks for asking. And I didn't tell him to ask that. So you can get a front anamorphic and you can get rear anamorphics. And the difference should be pretty apparent from the get-go. To get the true anamorphic character, you have to do the work in front of the iris. There are no easy ways around that. So when we sat down to do, I said earlier, when we were looking at anamorphics, talking about anamorphics, spherical lenses shooting Super 35 or shooting on full frame now have plenty of resolution, even if they're going to crop it to 2.4 and release widescreen. So my mind, when we decided to go full hog and do anamorphics, the only reason to do that is to make it look anamorphic, especially in this world of digital where it's crying out for things that will make it look less digital, more cinematic, take the edge off of it. I mean, what was the first thing people did as digital cameras came out? Speed Pancros, old Boltars, you name it, they were using it. So when we did our anamorphics, we did traditional anamorphics and we did them in the front. We don't do it in the extreme front. We do it mid-range, but in front of the iris. So that gives us the true anamorphic look and still manages to keep the lenses a bit smaller than they would be as if we did a real, put it on the front. We wanted our friends at Angénieux to do a full front anamorphic zoom, and they did some really terrific rear adaptations on their Optimos that really filled the void, but we decided we wanted a true front anamorphic zoom, and so we came out. We've already we've delivered the 35 to 140, and we're still waiting to deliver a 45 to 450, which will hopefully be out late this year. But the answer to the question is, that's how you get you get the bokeh, you get all the character of anamorphic by having the cylinder group in the front.
Okay, another question for Les, so let's make it a quick one.
Yeah, last one here is the cost of the Cooke macros specifically.
Our lenses run in, they're around 20 grand a piece, 17 to 20, I believe. We have lenses starting with the mini S4s that are in the about $7,000 range, up through the big zoom of the 45 to 450, which is $60,000, $70,000. So they run the gambit. A lot of the 7s and the anamorphic full frames tend to be around $20,000 to $30,000.
Are you taking advantage of this pandemic shutdown to catch up on the back orders?
I wish that were true, and that's what we thought we were going to do. Literally, we did think that. We thought, okay, we're going to put stock in, and people will be able to get, when they come back to life, we'll be able to deliver. As it turns out, there's always some part of the world that is working, and our factory did shut down for a week or two to refit, to become COVID, up to COVID standards. But we are back pretty much at almost full production because some part of the world is always taking stuff. So we have yet to put in inventory. So I can smile, you can laugh at that. And we are getting better though. We're really working on getting delivery times to be a bit better.
All right, well, thank you very much, Les.
My pleasure. And
appreciate your time. Yeah.
As always, thanks for hosting this. And hopefully next year we can do it live in LA.
Can't wait. I'm pretty much ready for this to be over, as I'm sure everybody in the audience is. All right. Next, we have my old friend who we all know so well. He's with Fujinon Fujifilm optical devices, or whatever we want to call it these days.
That works.
Tom Fletcher. Tom, tell us about the latest from Fujinon, the Premistas, right?
Yep, we're going to go through and talk about the Premistas today, but we have a full line of lenses ranging from our MKs. We'll talk about that actually at the end. Our XK cabrios, our ZK cabrios, and our Premier lenses. Jim, I first want to just say thank you for hosting this, and I like that you're doing this, and you're doing this from the buyer's perspective. And I have a unique position because I have been a buyer of almost everybody's product on this panel. I used to own a rental house in Chicago before I connected with Fujinon. And so looking at value and where you're going to make your money back is an important aspect of buying any piece of equipment, but especially optics. And when I did sell Fletcher, when our family sold Fletcher, that optics was the area that we made money. You know, the lenses that Les sold me, I was able to make money on on those lenses because they were a great investment. So, you know, that's true for everybody. I'm not, because I didn't mention somebody else, I apologize. And but one of the things that's happening now is coming out of COVID, you know, the use of a zoom we feel is going to be extremely popular, and we're seeing it already where we're getting phone calls from rental houses looking to find the T2 Premier lenses that we make. We make an 18 to 85 T2 zoom, which we think is going to be very popular post-COVID because they want to eliminate the number of touches to the camera and changing lenses, and it's a very respectable T-stop. It's going to give you a nice cinematic aesthetic. But what I'll do is I'm going to play a video here from Bill Wages. He's going to be talking specifically about the Cabrio 19 to 90 that he uses quite frequently. It's a short version of his interview, and you'll see some things that Bill talks about. Bill is a lifetime television honoree from the ASC. He's recently shot Yellowstone and Lethal Weapon, and if you can play the video.
Since the 19 to 90 came out and I started using it, I've not used any other zoom. It's changed the way I shoot because of the ease of operation, the ease of not having to change lenses all the time, just reach down and change the focal length.
No one is beyond redemption.
That has made things go a lot faster, not only in feature films, but commercials and also TV series. One of the wonderful things about the digital revolution is the cameras are much more sensitive than film. That allowed me to use zoom lenses as opposed to primes, and with the optical quality of the Fujinon, it was not a compromise. This lens meant that I went in there with a camera body and a 19 to 90 zoom, and not a cart laden down with boxes and boxes of other lenses. And we would go a week with a camera and never change a lens. Plus, when the actors were doing an intense scene, being able to reach down and zoom in 5 millimeters to reframe to do another take can keep them in the performance. That's the biggest part of it. Therefore, when you cut it together, you see it. There's not fluctuation from shot to shot or angle to angle. And that's significant because ultimately it's about the actors. It's about the story.
So a couple of points that Bill makes there that before I get into the Premista, that I just want to just drive home is that speed of production, getting through your page count. I know Denny at the top of this talked about the variable primes that Zeiss or ARRI had made a while back. We like to refer to these lenses a lot frequently as a variable focal length lens. And you heard Bill talk about being able to just zoom in a little bit. Well, a zoom lens that's parfocal is going to hold that focus throughout the zoom range, so you can comfortably use it as a variable prime or a variable focal length lens. And the other thing that I'll mention here, and I'll move on to the Premista, is Bill mentioned the blind test. And I asked Bill about that. And what it was is Bill needed to convince his producers and his director. He most recently worked with Roland Joffrey a very accomplished director, and did a feature film with him. And he wanted to use primes. He was like questioning Bill using a zoom lens, as you saw in the story here. And he did a blind test. And you know, that's something that we're actually conducting. It's actually being shot in Germany as we speak right now, going through and shooting our Premistas and comparing them against various lenses. And we should have that here in the near future. So not to talk too much about cabrios, because you know, cabrios are a good investment and you're still making money on your investment with the cabrios, and we still want to sell cabrios. But the new lens that we have is the Premista, and we have two lenses in the Premista. We have a 28 to 100 and an 80 to 250, both 2.9. The 80 to 250 does ramp from 200 to 250, about a half a stop to a 3.5. Both of them are the exact same size and weight. There's 8 pounds. 8-pound lens, to be exact, 8.3 pounds. And how we came up with the name Premista is people wanted premieres, and you're going to see Tobias Schleicher here in a second talk about the making of Rhinestone Blue. And Tobias is a big fan of our premieres, loves the lenses, and he wanted to make sure he saw that image quality that he's used our lenses for in feature films in the large format lens. So we basically took a little bit of Premiere and a little bit of ISTA, and that's how we came up with the name Premista. Why don't we roll the piece here, and we'll come back to Premistas afterwards.
For Rhinestone Blue, we used the large format Premista zoom lens.
We shot the whole film on that lens, which was really an exciting challenge.
Margaret! I felt for the first time like, wow, I have a lens that has the same quality as a prime lens in terms of the contrast, sharpness, and I was very impressed by the lack of focus breathing and the depth of field.
The Premista 28 to 100, I think is fantastic. Great for dollies, pursuit vehicles, great for cranes, big range of what you need.
This 28 to 100 Premista is a very good all-around piece of glass. I wouldn't hesitate to go out with that and a few primes and call it a lens package.
Gotta love it. The biggest surprise to me is really how cinematic the lens looks.
Yeah, let's do the unexpected. The full frame 28 to 100 lens made it happen, and it just made it that much more fun that it was my dad.
I felt very safe with those lenses. This will be my to-go lens now. I was blown away by how similar it is to the Fujinon Premiere, what I'm used to seeing on the big screen.
So, you know, one of the comments that he made there is that it has the same qualities as a prime lens. That to us is really something we're very proud of, and we're excited to show that in the test that we're going to have here shortly. We have a lot of cinematographers that have been shooting with the lenses over the last 8 months. The lens has been out. We're seeing traditional people that have been fans of Fujinon, like Tobias and Claudia Miranda, Paul Cameron, but we're seeing some new faces and names of people that are using our lenses. Bob Richardson is shooting a project right now where he's carrying the Premistas. Dana Gonzalez is shooting Fargo, actually here in Chicago, which is where I'm at. And we're just seeing new people that are coming to these lenses and discovering the quality of the Fujinon lenses that are out there. With the lens, we do have a way to get to LPL to talk about what Art is saying. That was an important fact for me as somebody who came from a rental house. I wanted to have a lens that if we're selling it, it has to be future proof, so that the rental house, as LPL grows in popularity, that the rental house has that value of buying something that's not going to be something that's going to be obsolete if LPL takes off or when LPL takes off. The other point that we really pushed the whole cinema team here in the States as well as in the UK was the lens data. And I'll give another call out to Les Zellan with his /I data. We were a big believer in lens data early on at Fletcher Chicago. We bought lenses. We bought the ARRI Zeiss Ultra Primes with LDS because we bet lens data was going to take off any year now. And that was 2005. Well, I guess it's taken a pandemic to make lens data really take off, because we have the /I and then the Zeiss extended data in our lenses. And that has been, in the last few months, has really been driving awareness on our lens and sales on our lens. And we're very excited about that, and the whole virtual production kind of echoing what Les talked about. But having a zoom lens means that you can change focal lengths, and again, not have to go through and recalibrate the whole system. So the lens data is just right now in beta. We're going to release it as a full product mode here in the next couple of weeks. And we're very excited about that. And then last but not least, I did want to just talk about the MK lenses, which are low cost, $4,000, sub $4,000 lenses that are E-mount, micro four thirds mount. But actually Matthew Duclos, who's on the call here, he's actually doing a modification. He called us up and said, hey, are you okay if I take and modify this to put an RF mount on it? So the lens will now cover the Komodo, not all open gate, but in the 16:9 mode. And so we're excited. I talked to Matthew about once every 2 or 3 days, and Japan emails him about once every 2 days. There's a lot of demand for this, so we're excited about that. And with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Everybody works with Matthew Duclos. That's what I'm hearing, and I'm so glad he's here today. You know, I'm a big fan of zoom lenses, and I actually own 3 different Cabrios. One of the things that I like, besides all the speed of working with zooms, is that these particular lenses have macro built in. Do the new Premistas have macro capabilities?
They do not have macro built in to the Premistas.
Okay, well, can't have everything.
No.
All right, Matthew, do you have questions?
Yep, there's a couple. So Gaston, our A+ student of the day, asked if Fujinon has any full frame, handheld servo full frame zoom in the near future. So basically a Cabrio, but full frame.
Not currently. We have had people asking us to build a drive unit for our Premistas. Our 25-300 is a very popular lens for concert work and multi-camera work. It's a 3.5 lens that only ramps to a 3.85, I believe.
I think that sort of leaves out the handheld part, though.
I understand, but it has the drive unit. What we're seeing for large format is people are putting a Duclos Musashi expander, not to try to throw one right back at you, Matthew, but that is a great option. If you want to have the range, the focal range of a zoom lens, that is a great option. And one of the things that I also have seen on the chats is the image circle and illumination coverage. Our lenses, our Cabrios have a 31.5 image circle, but the illumination coverage is even bigger. So you can use a 1.4 expander on it, and it will actually cover the red Monstro 46.3, although the math would tell you it doesn't, but it's because of the illumination circle.
Yeah, I think with Jim's permission, we'll probably touch on image circle as a whole for everybody after the presentations.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
And then
another question for Fuji.
Yeah, one other one from Tom, for Tom. How well do the Premistas match the other wide zooms, the 18-85 or the 18-80? So I think he's mixing the Premier and the Alluras there.
Yeah, they're pretty consistent. It's the Fujinon look, which is not a Cooke look. That's not the aesthetic that we go for. If you want Cooke, then you should use Cooke. If you want a vintage look, you should use a vintage lens. We're very proud of our aesthetic, and we're seeing the adoption of people using our lenses and seeing the cinematic qualities of our lenses.
Tom, thank you very much. Great presentation. Next, we have our latest Digital Cinema Society sponsor. That's Infinity Photo-Optical. And Jay Margolis is going to tell us about some really interesting new lenses he has. Jay, take it away.
Thank you. I'm Jay Margolis, President and CEO of Infinity Photo-Optical. I have invented every lens that we have in our whole inventory. I won the R&D 100 award 3 times, the last time with Dr. Fauci present. I also won the Photonic Circle of Excellence 3 times. I have a patent on the correction for the Hubble Space Telescope's spherical aberration problems. And right now in space, on the International Space Station, my lenses are being used to look at the coldest place in the universe, the Bose-Einstein condensate on the International Space Station. Now, that was all in microscopy. But then something very special happened. Denny Clairmont, who we're giving homage to today, carried this lens for 12 years. This is the K2 long distance microscope. It was made in conjunction with ISCO Optic years ago. And Denny got me introduced at that time. Now, we have today 3 things I'd like to discuss, and that is the Micromac, which is our latest model, the TS160 Robusto, which is where it started, and the Suffocator. What's the Suffocator? The Suffocator is an attachment to the TS160 Robusto. Now, if we can start, please, I want to mention that I'm going to give a prognostication right now. Today's sensors have so little noise and such sensitivity that it is almost irrelevant what ISO is used. The decision to use one lens or another no longer is based on what can be used, but what artistically or technically should be used.
Please start the video.
Please start the video. Am I predicting this? No. It was Denny Clairmont, ironically, today's honoree, who died recently, leaving many of us greatly sick. It was Denny who stunned me with the statement. I showed him a micro lens and thought he should carry a Clairmont. And that came at almost exactly the same time that Roberto Laguna Ditliff informed me that the very micro lens was really one of the most significant he ever used in photography. The footage of almonds, coconuts, and coffee being seen here is incredibly the first use of that lens for cine production. Little wonder why Roberto Laguna Ditliff is considered Brazil's foremost tabletop cinematographer. And Denny mentioned that lens, the TS160, in one of his last interviews about the imminent sale of Clairmont to Keslow and the subsequent retirement it turns out he had so little time to enjoy. Well, Denny and Roberto's input set me to work redefining that micro design for cine. That became the TS160 Robusto. And we see here, Rob Stiff was one of the people who won one of the Nelsonian Awards last year, doing his work with forced perspective. Now the TS160 Robusto focuses from infinity to 16x. There's no macro lens that we can compare because this is a micro lens. TS160 Robusto went on to be runner-up to the Zeiss Supremes at Cine. And with this attachment for the Suffocator, it counters breathing by literally dissecting the focal planes. Went on to win the 2018 Cine Special Award. Here again is some of Roberto Laguni's work. The Robustos still remain our most advanced micro cine lenses. What if the logic of this design criteria was reversed? We get Micromac, a series of primes set for their finest image renderings at diffraction limits because they are based on microscope design. As they are, Micromacs are essentially the best they can be. Here's some work from Stephen McGee on the TS160, and again, Rob Stiff doing some forced perspective, TS160. You see some dots over in the field, that's really on the filter holder of the ARRI camera, sorry to say. Now, coming up pretty soon will be some Bs taken by Scott Portingale with the new Lumix S1H. So I'll wait a bit and see if that comes up. Now here's Avi Karpik doing product photography with it. In fact, we'll get to where Avi does the McFarlane Swarm taken from all viewpoints. But here again, more of Avi's work. Let me just watch that. These are Bs taken by Scott Portingale with the new Lumix S1H. Note that every hair on the B is clearly defined. Now, Avi Karpik's McFarlane Swarm is going to be coming up next, I think. No, actually, this is some work by Barry Bassett. These are photographs taken by different photographers in stills. And here you see the PET specs lens, which I'm going to get to and describe in a minute. Again, here is some mixed series of stills taken by Barry Bassett, and before we had by Paul Harcourt Davies, who's written 16 books on macro. Here you'll see the PET specs effect. The PET specs is another matter we'll get to in a minute. And here again are some macro shots. Literally, there's no limit to the focus of these lenses. Here again is a circuit board, a morph by Harcourt Davies. Again, this by choice. And this is actual doing of the I think it's a Samsung commercial. And here's McFarlane's Toys by Avi. Now, this has been called, many people who thought this was actually computer simulation, but it's an actual photo series, cinema series taken with the Micromac. Now, the Micromacs, there are the three different types of lenses, or actually two plus the suffocator. The DS160 Robusto, the Micromac, and the suffocator. The suffocator fits in the back of the Robusto and allows it to translate the focus by literally dissecting the depth, the Z depths. And so we have in the Micromax 4 focal lengths, 125, 90, 70, and they all can go to between 5 to 6x. The 40 can be supplemented by a 25 millimeter expander. So the Micromax we use whenever, wherever, and whatever. We say for insurance, put a Mac in your pack. Here we have lenses that are simultaneously compact, lightweight, world-class, and relatively low cost. But the Micromac doesn't stop there. Avi Karpik asked if the Micromax could be made to emulate some of the effects of old-fashioned PET spot lenses. Yes, so there are two, 50 and 40 millimeters, which we call PET specs. And then former Look magazine cover photographer Nicholas DeSoyce took the photos that we saw before with the PET specs 40 millimeter. The deliberate fall off and color alteration combined with high contrast is breathtaking. And so we come full circle. For a lot of the developments you've seen here today, go back to the inspiration from meetings with Denny Clairmont. Thank you.
Well, Jay, this is quite unique. Can you tell us what is the difference between this technology and a macro? Because this is a micro, right?
Yes, these are micro. And because they are micro, they're projection systems. So here, for example, is one of the Micromax, but it has a deliberate short projection distance. Actually, we could put a rear projection like this to cover a 67 millimeter format, or any format that's possible. So they're literally a microscope objective and another microscope objective, but after that, there are some very, I should say, difficult to arrive at parameters that make this all tick. And by doing this, the quality is almost perfectly diffraction limited. Resetting its diffraction limited at almost any distance. It came out of experience I had with the Hubble patent actually years ago. And it's really a Hubble Space Telescope in reverse, if you think of it, but scaled down. So we can literally build it this small, or we can make it, as I have on the Lumix here, the TS160 going to 16 power for infinity. Now, the TS160 takes these different front objectives. This is the HM Micro, SFX 1, 2, 3, and 4. They correspond to 100, 50, 35, and 24. You can even use these as a microscope with an eyepiece. So they came out of microscope technology, but they literally can focus and do things other lenses can't. Everything's in focus from infinity to about a meter. And then by turning the focus just ever so slightly, you can focus, in the case of the TS160, to within 16 millimeters, 18 millimeters at 16x. They work by the unique factor of finding the Nelson point. In microscopy, there's one particular point where the lens is nearly perfect. So when these are set at the little disc here, the lens is operating at its maximum. So some of the people who actually use this for the product photography you saw and other still photography have remarked. In fact, Paul Harcourt Davies and Mark Payne Gill, two very eminent people in the field, within 1 week wrote to me, and they literally used the same words. They said they were the finest lenses they've ever used for macro. So if anyone wants to do the very best work with macro, there's really only one choice. And it's either a micro mac for convenience, or it's a TS160 for perfection. The TS160 differs because it's a more professional unit in the sense that it has different front options. But every TS160 is also a macro lens in itself that goes to 4 power. By simply using this, with this configuration that comes with every single one, I now have one of the smallest macro lenses that focuses from infinity to 30 millimeters at 4 power. These are full frames. They could just as soon be 67 millimeters. They could just as soon be CMAC. They literally can be anything.
So you're also suggesting that these could be used to get a unique look for not just macro, but regular photography with hyperfocal, hyperfocus, right?
That's correct.
But I imagine this takes quite a bit of exposure. Can you give us any sense of that?
It does and it doesn't. Yes, but the cameras that are coming out today with dual native ISO and similar things are the future, and Denny knew that. And that's why Denny suggested that we would actually get together and go into a venture with this. But unfortunately, he was 82 at the time. And so we had to put that off. And eventually he just came to the conclusion he had to retire and sell to Duclos, Keslow. Then he got me in touch with Matthew, and Matthew and I have been talking about this as well. Matthew's
cool. I'm eager to play with these when we have a chance to get out again. Let's see, Matthew, do you have any questions for Jay?
Yep, a question from Roberto, specifically on the forced perspective shots. What combination of lenses were used for those?
Yeah, that was done very early on by Rob Stiff. He's one of the, he's the last person over here, back here, who's holding the Sony award. He used an ARRI, I don't know the exact ARRI model. I know he used an ARRI camera with the TS160 and the SFX1, I believe.
And then second,
100 millimeter equivalent.
And then the follow-up to that question.
The story here is that these are microscopes, and they're designed spherically to work as a microscope. After 1 meter, they start falling off in their optical correction ever so slightly. Not being satisfied with that, I decided to reverse the spherical correction So that what you have here are two similar lenses in focal length. But this one works from 2 meters to infinity better than this does. And this works from 1 meter to 18 millimeters better than this would. Many people see very little difference. I do, so that's why we offer these two. But then we go to a 50 and I think it's a 35 and a 24. Yeah.
We're running a little bit over, so if we have one more question, we can answer it quickly.
Yep,
Matthew?
the quick follow-up to that, again, for those forced perspective shots, is what T-stop were they shot at?
I don't know. We'll have to ask Rob Stiff on that. I don't know. I don't know the characteristics that he used to do it. I just know that he did it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jay. That's a really interesting presentation. Next from P&S Technik, we have Gerhard Baier. Gerhard, tell us about P&S Technik lenses.
Okay, thank you. Well, welcome everybody all around the world, and especially hello to all my friends I have not seen for a long time. So it's really great for me to see you all. And hopefully soon, maybe early next year, I can hug you in person. This event is dedicated to Denny, and I also want to thank Denny at this point for all the time I had the honor to spend with him. I will never ever forget this. It's really great and gave a lot of impact for me in this industry. So, but what is P&S doing? So I look again to what this event is about, saying from the buyer's perspective, and I try to put a little bit focus on that. So we in Europe, obviously it seems that business comes back. It's restarting. We got more attention for sales people asking for products that are currently in the market. And one of these products, I was a little bit surprised that the demand is so increasing, is the current product, the Evolution. So the Evo, 2 times anamorphic for a Super 35, which is basically in the market for quite a while. But it seems now with all the new Super 35 cameras coming into the market, like the Co-Moderator, like the new Canon, and later the year or early next year, the ARRI, it seems a very good idea, a very good investment in this lens price point, 15,900 euros. So it seems to be a good investment for 2 times anamorphic in Super 35. By the way, the longer focal lengths do cover larger formats. And probably Mini might not only be a camera, but also a lens. So this is a classic anamorphic from the late 70s or 80s. So I just wanted to mention this. We extended the range of lenses on 2 more lenses, which is the 32 and the 135. So it's a range of 6 lenses, matching by the characteristics they have the old Covas. And this is a very unique and sorted flavor, I would say. So given this, when I visit rental houses, when I look into the lens departments there, it's like entering Treasure Island sometime. Really, it's a lot of old, wonderful glass sitting in there. So we realize that there is a huge demand on rehousings, especially for K35s, Canon FDs a lot, Leica Rs, and given the old Covas. By the way, when we rehouse the old Covas, they will look like these new Evolutions. And we realized that there is questions for mid-size format lenses to be rehoused for cine use. So from a buyer's perspective, yeah, I would say this is a look what you have and make this what you have, keep this old glass alive and make it probably work with a modern mechanics on modern cameras. I have here, we decided by this request we got from the market, we decided to do a modification of our rehousing. Yeah, we developed a new cam drive system. We play around with different numbers of iris plates. So for, let's say, roughly 4,000 euro for a lens rehousing, keep your old glass alive, I think this is, from a buyer's point of view, probably a very good deal. So given this, I also did the same thing here. I just want to mention that. And I found some old 16 millimeter lenses, a lot of them, that small. And I decided to make a Sony E-mount for them. So that goes on Sony E-mount cameras. I did some test shots because the Sony Venice, you can take the sensor block off. I think it's called Rialto, where you have the sensor block with this little lens in front. If you rate the camera down to 3.8K or 4K, you probably got full coverage of the sensor with this little from the Super 16 times lens. Interesting look you can gain. It looks to me like this old Kodak material from the 80s, a little bit grainy, a little bit distortion. It's just when you look into Treasure Island, in what is in your lens department, be creative. And this is something I wanna, I just thought I show it to you, will come soon for Sony E-mount cameras. What we have now, well, forgive me when I say new, because it was announced since quite a while, but we never had been really satisfied, and we worked on the Technovision lenses. Same concept basically as from the Evolutions. So I send you a little animation, I think, if you can play that. It's the group of Technovision lenses. It's 13 seconds, not so much. Okay, thank you. Yeah, if you see that slide, that's the range of Evolution lenses. That was at the beginning. I missed that. Okay, fine, thank you. So the Technovision lenses, we have from 40 to 50, 75, 100, and 135. These lenses are based on the old Technovision lenses from the 70s. It's a concept that worked pure front anamorphic. Yeah, you see the single focal length. That's the new design. We also reworked the design. You can take the front cap away, and you can probably change it with another filter, or just avoid any reflections if you want. So the idea of these lenses is basically, can I get my camera again? Get the slides off, because here is the father and mother in one piece of these Technovision lenses. That's a 40 millimeter Technovision lens, is based on a Cooke double speed Pancro, hello Les, from the 70s with a front anamorphic element. And this is basically my reference lens. So what this lens does, when you look into the movie history, a lot of big movies in the 70s, 80s had been shot with Technovision lenses. All of these movies, or at least a lot of them, are iconic movies for today. So it's also my socialization when I watch movies. So I started going into the cinema. This is what I saw. So we saw the demand coming for a product like this to be reinvented. So what we did, we re-engineered the old lenses. We found out that they had been based on mostly Cooke lenses as taking lens, and some Zeiss lenses. That's one of based on the Zeiss lens. And we figured out a way to go between, forgive me, Zeiss, it goes a bit more into the Cooke direction, yeah, from what the characteristics of the lens is. But then we thought also, let's do it for full, or I like the word more, larger formats. So that refers to the squeeze factor that we have. A 2 times squeeze on a large format, which is a wide format by itself, would not really work from the factors. So what I learned is a 4:3 sensor size basically works perfect with a 2 times squeeze. If you have a wider sensor, and the tendency of scalable sensors is that they're going wider, you probably lower the factor to utilize most of your sensor, and probably most of the deliver as much information as you can to distribution. side. If you figure that out, yeah, you are somewhere in between 1 and 2. 1.5 is somewhere in between 1 and 2. Then we did a calculation, and we actually had calculated, we looked in all the cameras and all the aspect ratios, horizontal, vertical pixels. So we made a big scale, and we found that a factor of 1.5 is kind of a universal factor to keep the anamorphic look, to keep the oval bouquets, front anamorphic, yeah, to keep the strikes, the flares. So everything that you acknowledge with or see as anamorphic is in front anamorphic, and you can keep it with a factor of 1.5. But you utilize most of your sensors in different aspect ratios. Now that we have scalable sensors. So you do the calculation of frame lines, you set up your cursors on the frame lines, and this way on the sensor, you can use most of the sensor by a given distribution format. So you end up with a factor of 1.5 to be kind of universal, keeping the anamorphic look, and that's why we went with. So the lenses, they do full format and more. Yeah, we reworked the 40. It's now a 40 millimeter full format lens. Before we had a slight vignetting. We spent some new glasses on the whole line of lenses. We used bigger anamorphic front elements. We have a 136 front diameter. That's what Les said before. When you pure front anamorphic, you had somewhere you had to get the light through. But from the 50 on, we also cover Alexa 65 formats. So that's also it's a side effect. It was not really intended, but this is what came out of that. Also, we had the chance, we played with codings, we played with positioning of lens groups and lens elements with the moving elements we have in there. And we got the lenses a bit faster now. So in the Film and Digital Times spec sheet, for example, the 100 is with a T3 in there, but I got this lens right today out of production, and what you see, I hope you can see it, it's a 2.5. So Technovision anamorphic 1.5, T25, the 100. So as Les, we also tried to work for after the pandemic. It went okay or went not so okay, but we will start delivery of these lenses roughly in August. So this is the plan with those. For those people that are asking how many iris blades we use it's a little bit depending on the focal length. It's between 12 and 15. And I'm sure there are some colleagues out there that had heard of zoom lenses, Technovision zoom lenses, for quite a while. And first time now, I'm going to show you something. So what you see here is one part, or at least the whole part of the 70 to 200. So for all folks out there, it's coming. That is the message. So this is not for me to play here in my test and measurement room. This is real. I just wanted to show that. So what else do I have from the buyer's perspective? Two more things. Again, when you look into your treasure island, you probably may find some 24 to 290 Angénieux zoom lenses. This little thing for roughly 6,000 euro will make it a full format zoom lens. So save your investment of 80,000 by a plus of 6,000 for larger formats. And we do this, we distribute this here. It's made by Optica Magnus in LA, where I also want to show you, if there is a question, how to view your larger format without a battery. Here you view your larger format without a battery. Optica Magnus full format finder, purely optical. It will be a spherical and an anamorphic version. And the absolutely trick here is that you only have to buy one ground glass, either spherical or anamorphic, and you can create your frame lines by yourself with a printer, which we will give the recommended model, and acetate slides. So if we can go back to the picture, acetate slides. So in other words, there will be an app available where you can print. Let me use my skirt as a screen. Can you see it?
Yeah, you can barely see that. Yep.
Yes, where you can print your frame lines. Again, we made a list of frame lines. I think we ended up roughly 130 that you will find on the app, but you can create your frame lines. Yeah, you only need one ground glass and you put the frame lines, it's an acetate slide, and you put the frame lines into that.
That sounds like a good way to future-proof it. We're running a little over on time, but I would say it's very impressive
I'm
that
done.
You're rebuilding these lenses and making them better than they were. You know, more compact, lighter weight, and even including the speed of the lenses. I don't really have any questions. A lot of good information. Matthew, do you have a quick question?
Yeah, there's a couple. What's the difference between the original Kowa and the Kowa Evolution lenses?
Okay, the difference between the original Kowas and the Kowa Evolution lenses is that the Kowa Evolution lenses are redesigned Kowa lenses. So this all started with mechanical service of the old Kowas. You know, mechanics had been worn out. You have to change mechanical parts. So we did new mechanical parts for the old Kowas. You put it in. More and more mechanical parts came together. At the end, you had a new mechanical system. Then you had the issue that partly doublets or triplets that had been in there, the glass had been broken, the glue went off, something like that. So you started to separate the glass elements. Sometimes they broke, you had to redo the glass. So we did glass analysis. What kind of glass is used? Yeah? Can we find a similar glass today of modern glass types and reshape the physical layout of that piece? So can you do that? So, and we found out, yes, you can. And the new ones are such similar to the old ones that we even, for example, with doublets and triplets, replace on an old Kowa a broken doublet or triplet with the new ones. And you might not see that big of a difference.
Perfect.
So
and then
once you did this, you had mechanics and glass, and we decided, okay, we put it together in one piece, the Evolution.
So it's a combination of new and old.
Yes.
Okay.
But
and then
the Evolutions are completely new, all new material, new glass. And when we rehouse Kowas, we try as much as we can to keep the old glass, but we replace all the mechanics.
Okay. And then the next question there, I believe, was answered, but
maybe we better wrap it up then, because we are really, really over time.
Okay. Yeah, I think he answered all the questions about the Finder anyway.
Yeah, very good. Gerhard, thank you so much. You've got a lot of great products there. And
you're welcome. Next
up, we have from Sigma, Brian Linhoff. And Brian, where are you in the world today?
I'm in cinema capital of nowhere, St. Louis, Missouri. So
it's funny how everybody's all over the world.
Yeah, I've been sitting in my office like I have for the last 3 months, but you know, I think we're all ready to get out and move, but we're all, you know, doing as best we can. So
I know you have some interesting new products from Sigma. Can you tell us about them?
Yeah, if you'll throw up the first image slide, it's the first thing we talk about. Les talked about a little bit earlier is we've put out we've redesigned our mount for PL with /I or dye technology on all of our PL mount lenses. And this came about because basically in Maverick Top Gun 2, we prototyped some lenses, set of primes for Claudio, and his main goal was that he loved the lenses when we didn't have the slash eye, but he said, I'd love to use these, but I had to have the metadata. So we prototyped them for him. He used them on the project, and if we ever see the film, maybe sometime next year, get to see a lot of Sigma imaging in there. But this is with us spending the money and the time to develop that, we decided to roll that out to all of our PL mount lenses. So going forward, if you do buy a Sigma lens and PL mount, you will, especially on the primes, you'll get the slash eye technology. So it's kind of like a minor upgrade, but very useful to, visual effects houses and such, and gives us that, edge to move up to a higher quality production. That the glass has always been there, but maybe some productions like wouldn't use it because they needed that metadata, and the visual effect houses wanted that. So the other big announcement we have is we announced these out at IBC last year. These would be the classic lenses. What we've done here is taken our Sigma regular 10 lens set, and we've recoded them to give a different look and feel to them. It's common, I think, almost pretty much not everybody, but a lot of the manufacturers are trying to create that kind of vintage look or classic look, or like Les would call it the Cooke look. But this is our take on that, but still using modern mechanics and still having a high resolving lens, but to create kind of a more interesting look. So the lenses have a lot less contrast to them. They're a lot warmer, and they flare like no other Sigma lens has ever. So just hit the next slide. So here's a shot of, this is my beautiful backyard in St. Louis. So on the left, you'll notice this is the exact same, I think I shot this with our Sigma FP. On the left is, the 28 millimeter, just our classic look. And then on the right is the 35 millimeter classic. And there's nothing done to these in post or anything. I just literally set them up on a tripod and took the image. You can kind of see how they render color and look exceedingly different than our typical lenses. You can grab the next one. So this was just to kind of show how washed out and flary they can get with incidental light. This is just me with a little flashlight on the side. Nothing super technical. I'm working out of my house, so I'm doing the best I can to kind of show these off. But we do have a video shot by one of our pros, Timur Savan. This will show off the look and feel of the classics a lot better. This was all shot with a 35 millimeter prototype. And then you'll notice that the lenses are much warmer. You'll introduce a lot more flaring. If you're familiar with the Sigma look, it is a much more clean aesthetic on our traditional high-speed primes.
Hello.
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 a little short there. We do have some more projects in the works right now. The lenses started shipping in February with a limited production run out. So obviously February hit to March, which stopped production everywhere. So we haven't had much chance to get much footage out there and people shooting them yet. Pretty much the biggest project out there right now is they're going to be used on Halstead, which is a Ryan Murphy production, and Will Rexer's the DP on that. So they'll be coming out for that. But you know, they're giving you a very, you know, different look and feel than traditional from Sigma. We're trying to answer that feel out there for, you know, a different look and feel. So we have our traditional lenses that do very well, done very well for us, very clean, you know, contrasty, no flare look. You know, then Japan decided to kind of try to meet the needs of the environment out there. You know, my presentation's incredibly short, guys. I was trying to, I knew it was going to be at the end, so I figured I might get cut off. So I kept it short and simple. So any questions, guys?
Thank you. I don't have a lot of questions. I know that I've shot my last feature actually with your generation before that, the speed primes.
Yep, high-speed primes.
I used them on a Vericam, but they cover full frame, I believe, right?
Yeah, so I mean, they are designed to cover a full frame sensor. Our two zooms are 18 to 35 and our 50 to 100. Those are designed for Super 35, but all the primes are set to cover a full frame sensor. You know, we do have 10 lenses in the set, so you know, 14 all the way to a 135. The only thing we're kind of missing in the gap, the big gap missing would be between the 85 and the 105. This is the one hoping we see sometime soon. So that is not me saying one's coming. That's just me hoping. So
now the bad news, as I call it, isn't so bad for Sigma. So what's the price range of these primes?
So the set of the classics is $43,000. So that's the 10 lens set. So
10 lenses for 43. That's a good value.
Yeah, I mean, especially, I mean, they are, the biggest problem with them is not necessarily cost, is they're just really hard to get right now. I think Matthew can attest to that. So
he's a dealer, right? Yeah.
Yes, he is. But you know, everybody's had like some production delays, I believe, and we're all trying to deal and cope with that. So we obviously ran into some problems there. But we had a round of lenses shipping, so you'll find them in some different rental houses around the country now. I think Kessler has some. If you go to sigmacine.com, you can find more information about them. You can also find rental houses that have them if you're interested in taking them for a spin.
Now, Matthew, besides when am I going to get my lenses, do you have any other questions for Brian?
Andrew asks, any plans for Cine Prime anamorphic series?
If I had my way, yes, but they don't really reveal those things to me. So I don't know. So I'll be honest with you there.
And on that same topic, any additions to the regular zooms or prime series?
Nothing that I know of. At IBC, and NAB, our big push was going to be obviously the classics and showing those off. Typically, we announce stuff around the time frame of IBC, and I know it about 2 weeks before you guys do. So they're super secretive. So. And
then last one from our friend in Portland, Michael Kerner. Can you talk about the depth of field with the slower stop? I believe he's referring to the classics.
Yeah. So if you'll notice on the classics, they're rated at a T2.5 as opposed to a T1.5. You know, and T-stop value is typically it's a transmission of light value as a so when they change the coatings, we're getting some fall off on light hitting the sensor. So Japan, in my opinion, did the right thing and made that number available and on the lens, so you know about it. It does involve us explaining things a little bit more. The one thing here is though, your T-stop value is not to your depth of field value. That's actually a function of f-stop. How big is your iris? So by having a larger, it still has the same iris as our regular high-speed prime. So your depth of field is still very thin and small and can give you that very razor thin, shallow depth of field. But you're just a little bit less light's hitting the sensor. So if you're want to shoot the 135 and have 2 eyelashes in focus, we can still do that. That's mainly it.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
That's it for your questions, right, Matthew?
Yeah.
Okay, and with that, next we have my friend Ryan Avery. He's with Tokina, and he's going to tell us about all the new latest gear from Tokina.
Thanks, Jim. So Tokina Cinema has been producing lenses since about 2014. The company dates back to 1960, where they've been primarily a photographic lens manufacturer and doing a lot of manufacturing for multiple lens companies under multiple brands. They entered it in the cinema market in 2013-14 with the 11-16, which was originally modified from its photo version by Duclos lenses. And then in 2016, we introduced the Vista Primes, which are a T1.5 ultra large format lens designed. The area of definition is designed for VistaVision, but they actually will cover, most of the focal lengths will actually cover a Alexa 65 type size sensor. They're T1.5, incredibly fast. So I have a video that explains a little bit about it. It's a couple minutes, and then I'm going to show some images and talk about what's unique about the lenses as well as the other items in there. So we'll watch the video real quick.
The Tokina Vista Primes are a new level of optics for cinematography. These speed primes cover beyond VistaVision, which is 37.72 by 24.92 millimeters, which covers over 200% more sensor area than Super 35 and more area than full frame. These lenses all have a fast iris of T1.5, as well as having an area of definition that canvases fine detail on every corner of your sensor beyond full frame. Vista Prime's area of definition make the lenses stand out. The complex aspherical elements in the lens design result in vistas being sharp at the edges and in the middle of the frame. These speed VistaVision lenses are designed to be usable and gorgeous at wide open T1.5. Due to proprietary design, these lenses are masters of shaping light, resulting in very minimal chromatic aberration, even wide open. The Vistas have a 114mm common front thread diameter, which makes it compatible with many industry standard accessories. Vista Primes feature a standard 300-degree focus throw rotation to ensure that you can fine-tune focus easily. In production, having lenses that are easily interchangeable and able to match gear positions is vital to staying on schedule. Vista Primes have their focus and iris gears all in the same position. The color and contrast reproduction of each lens matches closely, keeping a consistent visual language for the film, as well as being able to maintain the same T-stop and keeping continuity in your exposure. Vista Primes virtually don't breathe. You can rack your subject from closest focusing distance to the background without a change in image size or location. Vista lenses were designed to match the human eye. The fall-off from the subject to the background is pleasing and results in a visual acuity closely resembling our own eyes. The Vistas are revolutionary tools that you can utilize to create beautiful images that inspire and move. Whatever story you are telling, Vista has you covered beyond full frame.
So that's a bit of an entry-level position, probably a little bit more entry-level for this group than necessary. We know those things. We have some still images I want to show, which we can tee up here. The first one is an image of the Vista Primes themselves, whenever we get that on screen. So the video that we had was produced about 1.5 years ago. We've since added the 135, so now there's 7 lenses in the set, all T1.5. And then we are continuing to add, we'll add another focal length this year to start filling in. And we also plan to go longer. These lenses have been extremely successful for us. We have a large partnership with Panavision, and they are renting them with the DXL2, and they've been on a host of feature films. They're primarily being used in VFX as well. We recently had them used on Black Widow and the Marvel movie Fast and Furious 9, and one particularly proud of, Cats. So as that movie was used for that. So they've been used on a lot. We have another image that shows, the next image. This shows some of the fall off. These lenses are large. They are significantly larger than other T1.5 primes on the market. And the reason being they have a lot of air gaps between the images, or between the elements. And it creates a very pleasing fall off that we have. We can go to the next slide. This here shows some of the skin tone reproduction on lighter skin tones, and this was shot at T2 from a short film called Ostrich. We can go to the next one. And then we also have here another portrait type image where you can see replication of various skin tone types. So we'll go to the next image. You can see some of the flare here. This was shot by Ernesto Lamelli. Canon was actually showing Ernesto's stuff with the Sumire prime. Ernesto likes stuff like this, and so this is a similar, when you hit it from the side, you get quite a bit of flare there. And it's, again, you can flare it on and off axis. And this shows the bokeh. If you look in the background there, you can see it's a nice round one. This was shot at T1.5. And you can see that this image has a lot of highlight overexposure, possibly blown out. And you can see that there is, if you zoom in there, you would see very minimal to no chromatic aberration. Every lens has chromatic aberration, but this one is extremely well controlled. Then at NAB 2019, we introduced the Vista 1. They are the lens on there. It's a gray color barrel with blue accents. This one has a single coated front element. So we had a lot of requests for uncoated Vista primes. However, in our testing, we found that the uncoated creates a lack of information in a lot of places, and you see a lot of really, really strong flares that people don't like. So this is a balance between that. So it's a single coated front element. You can buy them separately and rent them as Vista 1s, or you can upgrade your Vista primes if you're an existing owner to Vista 1, which is a change of the external parts and the front element. So if we go to the next image, we can see some of what that does. So it creates this large blue inclusion that's in the front there. And if you can see that one is a bit wider. That's, I believe, the 18, possibly the 25. It's from a short film called Wheel Gleam that was shot by Phil Holland to show off the flares. You can see the flare of the flashlight there. It's very soft and pleasing flare. Both in the case of the Vistas and the Vista 1s, the Vista 1 being a little bit warmer. If we go to the next image that we showed there for a second, yeah. You can see here the skin tone. This is no diffusion filter. The skin tones are very, very soft and pleasing, much more so kind of like if you had a light diffusion filter on there. And depending on what color of light you hit these with, you get a different colored flare. So it's a very variable look. And people tell us with the Vista 1 and the Vistas, you know, they say, what does it look like? And I say, well, just imagine if Zeiss and Cooke had a baby. It's kind of in the middle there. So that's kind of where we're at. We have a series of cinema zooms that are T2.9. These are primarily Super 35. They're all T2.9. They all have a 95 millimeter front diameter. The 11 to 20 is a little guy. It's about this big. And the other ones are taller. The 25-75 we just announced. A lot of people are excited for that. Back to the coverage thing, the 11 to 20 covers Super 35, like Alexa classic SXT type sensor size on the wide, and then on the telephoto it covers full frame. And kind of the same with the 50 to 135. It covers a little bit more than Super 35, like red helium. And on the long end, it'll cover, actually will cover LF UHD. The 25-75 is the newest one. A lot of people excited, tons of orders. It's a compact 25 to 75 T2.9 zoom. This has a 36 millimeter image circle, so it's kind of in between. It covers Alexa Mini LF / Alexa LF sensor in 4K UHD. It'll cover 4K DCI in all of the cameras. So it's not quite a full frame lens, but it covers most of the sensors that people are using in the records that are being recorded in. We have some images. This is from our 100mm macro, which I didn't show on the slide, but it's another part. It's a full frame macro. It's only $2,500. We sell tons of them. This is an image by Chris Vanderschaff of some ink and water. And then if we go to the next one, this is an image from the 50 to 135 on helium. You can see the bokeh is very pleasing. It has a nice fall off. It's got high resolution. And the 11 to 20 and the 25-75 image characteristics are going to match this lens extremely close. So that's what Tokina has. Take any questions.
Well, I think I would ask, what's the bad news that I know is not so bad in your situation? What's the price range?
Yeah, the Vista Primes are approximately $6,000 a piece. The Vista ones are approximately $9,000 a piece. And the upgrade, of course, is just basically the difference between the two. If you own the Vistas and want to upgrade later, it's about $3,000 lens. And then the Super 35, the macro is $2,500. The Super 35 series, the 11 to 20 is $2,400. The 25-75 has been announced at $5,700, although it's probably going to come down a little bit. And the 50 to 135 is $3,500.
Great. So Matthew Duclos, do you have questions from our audience or your own?
There's a sort of a generic question. I will ask real quick, Ryan. You mentioned, I think you mentioned additional focal lengths to the Vista lineup. Is there any specifics there, or just sort of?
All I can say at this time is we're planning on filling in the middle and going a little bit longer. The one this year will fill in the middle. We intended to announce it at IBC, but it will probably be October, but we will announce it. And unlike some of our other lenses, it will be available for immediate delivery. So all of our new releases, the second we announce them, they're available for shipment. And so
okay,
that's what we're doing.
And then Gaston had a question, which I'll probably just take myself. He says, Super 35 format is strictly defined by the ASC. There is no depend on what camera. When you refer to Super 35, why is that full frame format? Why is it that full frame format is not? To which I would say that it's not clearly defined anymore. I think what the ASC defined as Super 35 referred to as the film size, but these days it's out the window depending on what camera you're talking about. Super 35 for Red is different than Sony, is different than Canon, is different than Blackmagic. That standard is all over the place, and that's also the case with full frame.
Yeah, I don't think there's really a good answer for that. Yes, if you did if you're talking about 3-per for 4-per for whatever Super 35 is defined by the ASC in a manual a while ago, great. Super 35 is kind of an industry term that we're adopting for everything kind of in that range. I wish that the folks at the ASC, Matthew and I sit on an ASC committee along with several people in this room. I wish we would come up with something for a format standard to call it, but it's just not. So we just refer to it as Super 35, which meaning it's basically in the ballpark. Although I agree 100%, there's no good definition for it. So.
And the ridiculous thing is the sizes are so different from one another. Yeah. There can be a 30 by 18 is considered Super 35, but so is 25 by 19, so is 24 by 18.
I talk in image circles, yeah. So I talk in image circles.
31.1, 32.6, 33.8. 35.4.
Les, you had something to say?
Well, I was just going to say, ever since we left the film arena where Kodak with the various film manufacturers agreed on a standard, it's been the Wild West, because we're in the chip manufacturer, and every camera guy wants to do something different to differentiate his camera from the next. So standards are over, I think, as far as
and same goes for full frame. Full frame, VistaVision, and the large format, as far as cinematography goes, are all loose terms that we use for that size. So one more quick follow-up for Ryan. Gray asked, do you have metadata support on your lenses?
Currently, no.
Other than PL.
Yeah, currently no, although I do keep in my office this lovely plaque. So we are a member of the /I. We've given Les his euro, but we're we're still working on it. The problem is the Vista Primes are currently available in interchangeable mounts, LPL, which is relatively new, which you can do with our lenses, PL, EF, Micro Four Thirds, Sony, you know, whatever you want. We make the whole zoo, and they're interchangeable between those mounts. When you put /I in there, it becomes more difficult to change the mounts, if not completely precludes it. So we are looking at that option, and especially because our lenses are being so widely used in VFX. I recently saw a solution from C-Motion that will take any lens that doesn't have /I. I'm not entirely clear on that process because somebody sent me a 20-second video.
You can use encoders.
Something about it.
You could use encoders.
Yeah, I know it
ARRI
uses encoders. I don't know if
ARRI has a system as well.
Yeah.
ARRI's got one as well. It's the same system.
Yes,
it's just motors. It's just motors that.
Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but of the Tokina lenses that do have an interchangeable mount, the actual part that you would purchase to swap is universal across all of the interchangeable mount Tokina cinema lenses. Yes?
Correct. Yeah, we haven't come up. I was going to use universal mount system, but Snehal stole that one already. So I got to figure out a new name. But we do have one. However, I will mention that the 11 to 20, 2575, and 5135, although the Vista mount will work on it, the internals of the lens and the light baffling is protected by a special baffle for those. However, you technically can use the Vista mounts on anything, but technically the zooms need their own separate. But it's all interchangeable, including the macro.
Well, thank you very much, Ryan. Nice presentation. Next, let's hear from Snehal Patel from Zeiss. You're looking very good there, Snehal, in your showroom set.
Okay?
I think you're still in your living room. But it's great presentation. So, Snehal, tell us what's new from Zeiss.
Sure, absolutely. First of all, I want to thank DCS. I also became a member when I first moved into Hollywood, way back in, I want to say 2006, 2007. So, you know, out of, in the bulk of the years that I've been here in Hollywood, I've been a member of DCS. And I think one of the first events, live events that I went to was one with you, Jim, where you introduced, I think it was a Canon event, which is great because it's exactly like you said, trying to put information out there for the community, make it accessible. You know, now that we have the internet and everything else, it's a lot easier to get information. But back in the day, it was much more difficult to gather all that information together. And I think your team has been integral for our community all over the world.
Well, thank you for the kind words, because when I say it, people might think I'm full of bull. But
hey, you've helped all of us. I think each one of us.
But from somebody as respected as you, I think you listening out there, guys? Check out DCS if you're not a member.
Check out DCS if you're not a member.
Now to Zeiss.
And also thank you for dedicating today to Denny Clairmont. Denny Clairmont is made a very big impact on the community everywhere. Cinematographers everywhere have learned a lot from him, have benefited from him, have benefited from his gumption, his know-how, and also just the idea that we'll create a solution that's going to work for your storytelling. And that idea that you want to take from start to finish, you know, you don't just manufacture stuff in a bubble. We have to manufacture things with a purpose. And what Zeiss has been doing is trying to pay attention to exactly what Denny was talking about. You know, don't make assumptions about what you think cinematographers are looking for in the image in the frame. You really got to listen to them and then try to develop products, you know, that work for them. Zeiss has a very long history. We started in 1846 with microscopes, and in the 1890s is when we started photography lenses. So we have a very long history of making lenses both for the consumer and professional markets when it comes to optics for cameras, different types of camera systems. And today we still make lots of different lens solutions for many different types of cameras. Many cameras that you might not even work with or heard of up until recently, like C-mount, for example, because you know there's been a lot of industrial use of those kinds of lenses, but now we're starting to see that everywhere as well. Now, what we want to talk about today is some of the newest stuff that Zeiss has. Now, we can go ahead and play the first video, the focal length comparison video. Let's talk about the Supreme Primes. The Supreme Primes have been out for a few years now, and they're doing quite well. They're on a lot of television shows, a lot of movies, paired up with the Alexa LF, LF Mini, Sony Venice, Red Monstro in terms of the larger format sensors, you know, the full frame or close to full frame. They've also been paired up with the Alexa 65 in certain situations with a reduced sensor size, not 6.5K. And they've been used on a lot of Super 35 cameras as well. So they have multi-use. You know, Matt mentioned below the importance of having the PL mount, because the PL mount allows the lens to be used on many different camera systems. We have 14 focal lengths planned for the Supreme Primes, 13 of which are available today. So the 14th one is going to be the 15 millimeter T22. Sorry, I take that back. The 15 millimeter is T118, okay, T18. The 18 is a T21, and then you have T21 all the way up to 135. So you have, you know, 15, 18, 21, 25, 29, 35, 40 new focal length, 50, 65, 85, 100, 135, 150 again at T18, and then 200 at T22. So all those focal lengths that I mentioned are available except the 15, which will come out next year in 2021. But all the rest of them are available for purchase now. There are, you know, rental houses, even though we're in challenging times, there are still commercials and other productions going on, and we're starting to see some prep scheduled for TV shows. So we are starting to see interest in completing these focal length lines, because a lot of the rental houses have Supreme Primes already in rotation, and they want more focal lengths. The DPs always want more focal lengths, and we can see why. Like, each focal length is going to change how a character looks and feels depending on your distance from the talent and you know, the focal length of lens that you're using. So there's a different emotional response that different focal lengths of lenses give you, and the more focal lengths you have, the better you can allow the cinematographer to make choices on what paintbrush they're going to use to kind of paint their story. So that's why we've always wanted to fill in all the focal length, you know, throughout the range. And that's why it's really important to release them as quickly as possible, so that you're not waiting 3-4 years to complete your set. What we can also see with the Supreme Primes is they have a really nice gentle sharpness. They're not meant to be super perfect lenses. In cinematography, we've always found that, you know, super perfection is not necessarily pleasing. It doesn't lend itself to the cinematic look. We've had people, you know, presenters today talk about, you know, making a more classic look, decontrasting somehow the lens, or creating a look like a Cooke look, or a certain type of softness, flare characteristics. These are all important storytelling tools. So the Supreme Primes is a nice way of making a small lens that's compact, and the largest lens has a 114 diameter, which looks like this. You know, the 135 is one of the larger lenses, but most of the lenses are in the series are quite small, with a 95 front diameter. And what that allows you to do is move quickly, have the focus iris rings in the exact same position. They're lightweight. They don't breathe a lot, as you can see right here. There's not a lot of breathing or anything like that. So they really provide the kind of characteristics that cinematographers are looking for in a great package at a pretty decent price. So their price point is between that of the Ultra Prime and Master Prime series, the traditional ARRI Zeiss lenses. And of course, we had a relationship with ARRI for 80 years, and we still do. We still make Master Primes and Ultra Primes for ARRI as an OEM product. But because we had that long history since the 1910s actually of making lenses for cinema, and since the mid-1930s with ARRI, we're using that kind of knowledge space that we have and know-how to start creating stuff for the high end and really listen to what cinematographers are saying. So the feedback on Supreme Primes themselves have been really good. There's lots of TV shows and movies you can watch now, you know, that have been using the Supremes. We have a playlist, so if you go to Zeiss Cinematography on YouTube, for example, there's a playlist of different projects, commercials, music videos, but also high-end TV shows, high-end movies, VFX projects, because the lenses have Cooke/I data that is enhanced with Zeiss XD technology, extended data technology, which allows you to track not just focus and iris position, which is a very common thing to track for most smart lenses, but also lens shading and distortion characteristics. And these are the same type of characteristics that we're using for visual effects, but also for virtual production. So for virtual production, you have to you have to profile lenses whenever you're using them. Imagine getting the lens profile, the distortion characteristics, the vignetting, the shading characteristics, all in real time automatically, and going straight to, let's say, the Unreal Engine, so you can generate backgrounds and foreground objects in real time. Let's hold off on just a second on this video, please. Thanks. So what we have here with the lenses is a very smart package where if you're doing a high-end TV show or movie where you have visual effects, we're giving you a money-saving technique by giving you data within the lens that you don't have to guess or figure out later, because a lot of productions spend time trying to figure out lens characteristics. And by having a smart lens in the virtual production space, there's other things you can do. So for example, a lot of people are watching Mandalorian and a lot of other virtual productions where they've been using projection screens in the backgrounds to create sets. You know, Oblivion did that really well when they made that movie. But now you're seeing more enhanced versions of this kind of concept. The thing is, you need to have data in real time, and we're working with companies like Sony and Unreal and others, NCAM, Moses, to make sure that we get this real-time data through, not just for small applications, but for large applications, for volumetric filming, for virtual production, and all kinds of things like that. It's becoming more important with the COVID crisis and pandemic, people at home. You know, we're starting to see that travel is going to become more challenging. Getting your talent out to a location in Montana is going to be challenging. Why not go shoot background plates and shoot everything on a stage where everything can be a lot more controlled? You know, this is why we're, you know, Tom mentioned this earlier and so did Les, that yes, it's becoming very important for companies to be up on this technology. So aside from the great characteristics and optics that you get in the Supreme Primes, you also get metadata. And the characteristics are, you know, Supreme Primes are neutral. So they're not warm or cool. There is a what you see is what you get type of situation. It gives you a really balanced color response. That's because they have really high quality anti-reflective coatings meant to block out as much light as possible and create as few reflections as possible, and to have the best light transmission as possible. That's why they're fast lenses at T1.5 and at the most at T1.8 or T2.2 for the 200 millimeter. Now there's a subset of lenses, and we could start playing the other video in the background, please. There's a subset of lenses that are the Supreme Prime Radiance lenses. And the Supreme Prime Radiance lenses, the whole idea was to create a specific type of special look. So you could actually see the blue flare characteristics versus the regular Supreme Primes, which give you a very distinct but you know, softer flare characteristic and very muted in comparison. So what's happening here is we're using anti-reflective coatings, which are, you know, integral to modern lens design, okay, is anti-reflective coating. You can see through one side of this lens that has anti-reflective coating, you can still see my finger even when I have a light source, but the other side of it, it's reflecting so much light back that's blocking, you know, an image going through. So an anti-reflective coating is really how manufacturers set themselves apart nowadays, because a lot of the other stuff like lens optical designs and the math of how lens optics are designed, even the materials that we use are very similar, but we set ourselves apart with things like the use of coating. And what Zeiss tries to do normally is try to go as neutral as possible. So we we invested in technology just a few years ago, 2015, 2016, that allowed us to scientifically analyze in a computer system using AI and also supercomputing to figure out how ghosts are caused, like how flare characteristics are caused for different optical designs and different materials and different coatings. And the idea was to dial it down as much as possible, because like in the microscopes of the world, or the telescopes looking out into space, or NASA space equipment, you're trying to cut back that characteristic as much as possible. But now where we wanted to use that technology to creatively come up with a way to have a blue flare characteristics, which is very reminiscent of K35, Super Baltars, and other classic lenses that people love to use. Because again, sensors are so clean and so high resolution today, the cinematographers are having a harder and harder time of getting that naturalistic, organic feel of film that they really like, the pleasant feeling of that cinematic image. A lot of that cinematic image has to do with fighting against the clarity of sensor technology. Why do you think classic lenses and vintage lenses are so important right now and so in demand? If you go to rental houses and do your homework, you'll notice what lenses they're renting the most out of. So we took that data of what people like and came up with a plan of creating a set of, and can we play that video again while I'm just talking just a minute long? And you can see clearly the blue flare characteristics because we chose a spectrum of blue light to reflect back at out of the lens. And what that does is it bounces around inside a little bit. And there's at least like 5 differently coded elements inside the glass, or 6 maybe, that cause this kind of characteristic to form, this big blue characteristic to form. But it only happens when the light is really directly hitting the lens. When you hit light from the side or an angle or things like that, the lens behaves quite clean, and you'll see in the next subsequent shots that it's really a quite clean lens. And because you're reflecting back a little bit of blue light and all the other light goes through, the image is slightly warmer overall. So this is a lens that's definitely warmer than a regular Supreme Prime. So it gives the skin tone a different look than the regular Supreme Prime does. And that's the big differences between the regular Supreme Prime and the Radiance. Now the Radiance, again, used on a lot of TV shows. You know, Tom, I think, mentioned Fargo earlier when he was talking about the Premista zooms. Well, the primary prime lens on Fargo this last season and for the next season is the Zeiss Radiance lenses. And it's not necessarily just because of the flare characteristics. Dana loves just the skin tones, and this is one of the things he talked about, just the way it makes things look, and that warmer look that you're getting. He finds it very pleasing and really helped to dial in the look for the TV show. So, you know, there's other benefits to having that flare characteristic. But a very scientifically controlled set of lenses, 7 lenses available in the Radiance series from 21 to 100. And if people really like them and they take off, then we're willing to invest in doing more focal lengths of the Radiance as well. Again, we have 14 choices of focal lengths when you look at the regular Supreme Prime line, and there's a 7 lens subset, so there's always more possible. Aside from that, other full frame lenses that we have are the CC2 zooms, which are still very, very popular, 15 to 30, 28 to 80, 70 to 200 zooms, full frame, T2.9 all the way through, very nice shape, weight, everything. Here's a 70 to 200 right there, and the other lenses are actually shorter than these by a little bit. Very lightweight, you know, 5 to 6 pounds, great image characteristics, matches well with a whole series of Zeiss lenses like Ultra Primes, Master Primes, Supremes, and Radiance. And then, of course, we have the CP3. And the CP3 is becoming more and more important because not only does it have great image quality, it is an improvement from CP2s in terms of the flare characteristic control, the light bouncing around inside, and also the light transmission. It's a higher resolving lens than the CP2. And the CP3 also is lightweight, like very, very lightweight. So it can easily be put on drones and things like that. So people are using the CP3s, especially the XD version, for specialty shots, special effects, for different camera rigs where you have like a ring of cameras, for car commercials, a lot of drones, a lot of drone stuff. You'd be surprised at how many TV shows use, you know, a higher end Zeiss lens maybe for the show itself, like Supreme, Radiance, Master Prime, but they'll use the CP2s or 3s a lot for all these small specialty shots. They match well with their more expensive and better looking cousins, but they're really fantastic lenses, and they're being rediscovered by a new generation of people that haven't looked at them in a while. So that's what I have. I know Roberto Schaefer.
You answered all my questions.
I could answer,
but
yeah.
I think Matt has a couple.
Yep, we have a couple. Calvin asks, what is it about an optical design that creates a softer versus sharper focus fall off?
There's a lot of things that go into that.
Question for a PhD, but
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. I could just name a few though. First of all, it's like, what are you intending to do? So if you're trying to create an image circle on a Super 35 sensor, let's take that example because it's very common and there's lots of lens choices there, right? The larger you make your lens, the clearer and sharper you can make that image circle you want at the back. Okay, the better optics you put, the better design that you have, you can do that. Now you're fighting one thing that's just really important, is that iris. Because in photography and cinematography, we use creatively the iris, which we don't do in other applications for optics. Like your eyeglasses don't have irises on them, for example. But what happens is iris, when it opens...
I think he's referring specifically to the focus in front of or behind your image plane.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to mention. Is the iris has a big effect on that. So your design and the shape of your iris and the way that it's placed inside the lens also has an effect on your focus fall off and how soft things get at different t-stops. So I know that we have mathematical calculations for depth of field, okay, based on circle of confusion, but those are best guesses. Those are not actual accurate details. You have to physically measure on your camera lens combination what actually depth of field you're getting, because it will change depending on your pixel density and the quality of your optics. So the problem is that we want to do two things at once when it comes to softer and sharper focus lenses, is that we want sharpness, but we also want good performance when it's wide open. And these two things are very difficult to do at the same time. I hope that answers your question.
And one last question, Matt?
Yeah, I had Roberto asked real quick the price of the 70-200, which I believe it's about $19,999, something like that.
That's right. It's 20K. That's right.
And then,
it's about, well, it's actually about 21 now. I think it went up just a little bit. And 26 for the 15-30 and 21 for the 28-80.
And then lastly from me, quick follow-up, I wanted to ask from the...
And less than circle of confusion is an arbitrary number. Yes, it is. He's right. He's absolutely right about that.
From Zeiss's virtual trade show thing, there was a really, really good lecture by Benjamin Volker, and I don't know if that's available online anywhere, but if it is, I want to make sure you can get that to people, because that was really interesting.
I believe you could go back
flares,
to the,
right?
Yeah, what makes flares. You could actually go back to the trade show and click in that conversations section,
Okay, so maybe drop
and
a
it should
link.
be posted there. Yes, I'll do that. I'll drop a link so everyone can see that.
All right, well, thank you very much, Snehal. Appreciate it so much. I'm afraid that we're closing in on 2 hours, or double 3 hours, which is double what we originally planned. So I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap it up pretty soon. I would just ask Matthew, do you have any closing comments, Matthew?
I suppose the common theme here has been, I mean, you asked for questions, Jim?
No, I don't think we have time for questions, but just your wrap up if you want. Or
in that case, thank you everybody, the manufacturers and the guests, for joining. Once again, I'm honored to be attempting to fill the shoes of the great Denny Clairmont, and thank you, Jim, for putting all this together.
Well, thank you. Let me thank everybody now, including Jean-Marc Bouchut, Art Adams, Michael Bravin, Les Zellan, Tom Fletcher, J. Margolis, Gerhard Baier, Ryan Avery, Brian Linhoff, and Snehal Patel, of course. And I'd also like to give a big special thank you to our editor, Christopher Nell, who handled all the playback, and my lovely wife, Charlene, who did all those, sent out all those RSVPs one at a time. And I just will remind you that this will be available in a day or two on Vimeo. We'll put a link out and along with links to the other material that was mentioned in this. There's something from ARRI and a couple of links to Film and Digital Times. So we'll have all that posted in a couple days, and that material, the samples, will be much less compressed in that version. Today we had to keep them, file sizes sort of small so we could easily play and not buffer on Zoom. So thank you all, guys. Thank you for joining us, and remember to check out the Digital Cinema Society if you're interested, and thank you, thank you, thank you.